Are you there?
Good morning.
With
I
you.
can hear you on my end.
Okay, fine. Thank you. We can also hear you.
Good.
Great.
And we'll get started in a couple of minutes. We just have to get some folks settled and give you all a chance to get some food.
Here. Okay, I think we might just get started. It's a few minutes past. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the Postdoc Association monthly seminar series, Ms. Sheila Green. She's a research and scholarly communications librarian with the Medical Sciences Library here at Texas A&M. And she spent many years applying her BS in computer science to corporate software training, quality assurance, and project management before earning her master's in library science from the University of North Texas and making her move to libraries. She is now leveraging her background in medical libraries experience to partner with faculty, postdocs, staff, and students to advance their goals for learning, teaching, research, and impact. And so with that, please welcome Ms. Sheila Green.
Thank you very much for that great introduction. I also want to introduce on Zoom Kathy Carter. I think she's going to unmute and at least say hello. Or maybe not. But Kathy is our South Texas librarian, and she supports the Kingsville area and South Texas in general. So by all means, reach out to Kathy as you need things. One of the things that I really want to try to do with this session, since it is about integrity and what could go wrong, I don't want to stand up here and wag my finger at you about, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this other thing. So I'm using a lot of examples. I encourage you guys to go out, if you've got your laptops handy or your phones, and go out and look at some of these sites. Kathy will be plugging some links and so on into the Zoom side of this for any of y'all that are on Zoom. And, y'all will definitely get copies of these slides afterwards so that you can do the exploration and so on. But I really want to do, as best we can, make this as interactive as possible. Again, so I'm not just, telling y'all, don't do these things, because that's boring for you guys and not real fun for me. So with that, pretty much what I just said, we'll use a bunch of examples. We'll look at some ways to avoid some of those pitfalls and hopefully give you some resources to help you avoid whatever the pitfalls may be. I think I have succeeded in actually activating this particular poll everywhere, but please join in. This is going to generate a word cloud. I'll leave this up here for a little bit so y'all can get started. Why do articles get retracted? And I think I set this up so that you could do a bunch of answers or a bunch of responses. So present mode. Start seeing what we have so far. Why do articles get pulled? What happens? What goes wrong? Just think about retractions you may have seen or things you may have heard about, things you may have been involved in, or intentionally or not. But what kinds of things have happened? So data, anything about the manuscript, incorrect stuff, facts, references, great, authorship, caught, I like that one. Mistakes, also very, very important. Incorrect. Issues in general. I see a big one is data. So that holds fairly true. See a few more coming in here. Altered figures. That's another one that comes up a lot. So that's great. This gives me a few good things for us to look at. Let me set that one and pop back over to our slides. Okay, so let's look at Retraction Watch. And this is it started out as a blog from a journalist and just kind of publicizing, hey, these are some weird things that go on with science. We need to know about these things. And it has grown quite a bit at this point. This is the site. And Where I want to go, there's a lot of great things on here. Where I want to start though is I'm scrolling down to what's Appendix B on here on their user guide. Reasons. This particular group not only does the blog and the sort of the news items, it also keeps a database of retracted articles. So you can go in there and say, okay, how many articles have been retracted from JAMA in the last 2 years? Or check out a particular author and what has been retracted, or even just look at a particular title and see if it's been retracted. Some of these, okay, so we've got bias issues, we've got policy issues, citations. It cited retracted works. So one of their items in the reference list was a retracted article. That can be a big deal in a systematic review, especially if it was included in the set of conclusions, and then they say, oops, no, this is a bad article, have to go back and redo all of that. General complaints, kinds of things, concerns about animal welfare, concerns about authorship and affiliations, false authorship, paper mill kinds of things. I'm scrolling kind of quickly here. Concerns, issues, peer review issues, conflict of interest. Okay, they didn't tell us they were working for that particular pharmaceutical company when they shared this article. Contamination issues, disputes about copyright, criminal proceedings, that's bad. Doing the right thing. And this is one that the retraction watch people will actually add to their database. This is, we published this article and then we ourselves found this problem and raised our hand and said, hey, oops, we made a mistake. We had something screwed up in our spreadsheet, whatever. We want to retract it, correct it. And then usually they'll get an opportunity to resubmit that and bring it back up and say, okay, here's the fixed version. Duplication of article, duplication of data, images, those kinds of things. Plain old errors, errors in analysis, errors in data, that one came up. Materials, methods, ethical violations. I always like the euphemism one. This is the retraction notice. Didn't want to necessarily call out the authors for misconduct, but that's what they meant. Okay, that was, we did, this looks suspicious, so we're retracting it. And that's as far as they're going. Fake peer review. Okay, so does that make y'all think predatory journals? That there are a lot of publishers that have had to go back and say, oops, we didn't realize that this particular journal was kind of sketchy. So now we're pulling those, we're retracting those articles. We've got all the falsification stuff that came up on our word cloud. Get into patient consent kinds of issues. I mean, this list just keeps on going. Lack of approval. So there's just all kinds of things. Manipulation of images and results. Misconduct kinds of things. Objections by the authors. So in this case, it got retracted, but the authors are mad about it and they're objecting. Original data not provided, plagiarism issues. Sorry, I'm making you dizzy as I scroll through these things, but you get the idea here. Sabotage, somebody else messed with our data and we didn't know about it. I turned my dissertation directly into an article. Unreliable stuff, those kinds of things. So you can see there are a lot of reasons why this can happen. Get back to the page here. So for all of these slides, activate another word cloud here. How does this happen? I mean, why does this stuff come up? There in almost every article that's published anymore has at least 2 co-authors, there's usually 4 or 5 or 6 or 10. Did everybody know about it? Did some people maybe look the other way? What happens? How does this happen? Oops, that's the wrong one. Yeah. Okay, pressure. Big one. Carelessness. Mistakes. Accident. Yep. We're busy. Money. Good one. Deadlines. And this is just sort of a yes, no question either for the chat, for those of you that are on Zoom or you're in the room. In the case where maybe you had 6 or 7 or 10 co-authors, do you think everybody knew about whatever the thing was? Yes, no? Okay, I'm seeing head shakes in here. Probably true. Don't know if we have different opinions over on the Zoom side.
I'm not seeing any comments in chat, but if y'all want to participate via chat, I'm happy to share those comments with everyone.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, so there's reasons all over the place where this stuff happens. Let's take a look at one of these. And again, those of y'all on Zoom or that have a machine handy, let's take a look back at Retraction Watch. And one of the items over here on the left is retractions by Nobel Prize winners. Right? So this can happen to anybody. Is kind of the point here. If you're playing along on your computer, pick somebody of interest in your particular area or whatever. If you click on the name, it will take you to the entry in their database. So the one I'm going to use is Michael Rosbach. This is the Retraction Watch database, and it's going out and looking for the retraction. And I'll just make a comment here. Yes, this is a very old school interface. They need some more funding to beef up their look and feel, but the information is still good. What it's showing you on any of these, and we'll look at several of these, is the article, where it was published, who they are as far as the various institutions they belong to, the reason it was retracted. So we've got a doing the right thing and results weren't reproducible, links to all the authors. You have the DOI of the original paper, as well as the retraction notice. So we can take a look at that. And then if Retraction Watch wrote about it, they have a link to their entry. I'm going to grab this second one to bring it up. So that bumps me over to the paper that they retracted. I'm going to scan a little bit here. So this is part of their retraction notice. This is what we presented. Other members of the lab were unable to reproduce the observations. In-depth review, clear evidence that the person doing the work had repeatedly misrepresented and altered the primary data pertaining to the role. Okay, so there's some misconduct going on here. Independent investigation by the school. First author committed scientific misconduct. They were critical to the support of the conclusion, so we're retracting the article. And the first author, who's the one that had the questionable behavior, declined to sign the retraction. He's like, I'm gonna pretend I didn't do anything wrong or, whatever. The others said, no, this is wrong. We have an issue here. This Nobel Prize winner, this within the year that he got the Nobel Prize was within a year or two of this. So I'm sure he was inspired to go ahead and come out with this. I'm sure he also knew he was on the list for possible Nobel Prize. So it, obviously didn't end the man's career or anything, and it wasn't his work or him doing the misconduct, but somebody on his team did, and it affected everybody. I mean, it goes on everybody's CV that, hey, we've got a retracted article now. And he gets to show up on the retraction watch database list, which I'm sure he wasn't real excited about either. The other thing to point out here is that was a lot of money that was spent on this research. So it goes beyond just the author being embarrassed and the the institution being embarrassed. Now NIH is saying, oh my goodness, now we've got $4 million that didn't get spent well. So that's also not good. So when we're thinking about all of this, this is where responsibilities of authorship can come into play. A way to avoid this, okay, you definitely want to identify who the authors are, who has what roles, agree ahead of time who's responsible for what, and importantly, follow the journal and the institutional policies about who's an author, who shares in this. And what I'm going to do is pop back over, and I'm going to bring up the Medical Sciences Library page and bring up this guide that I'm linking to in the slides. So from the Services tab, Research Guides, these are all guides from our various medical sciences librarians. And I'm scrolling down to sharing your research. Okay, so this is a general guide on sharing your research, but the authorship page, anybody that gets listed as an author needs to be somebody that had substantial contributions to the work. They were involved in drafting and revising, and they have final approval of the version to be published. And this is where that signing on the retraction thing comes into play. Agreement to be accountable for all aspects of the work. Said, yes, I understand. This is the integrity. This is accurate. Have some details here about just responsibilities, making sure that everyone understands these things. And then issues, I have a link out here. If there's disputes about who's an author, there's a nice little website here about guides for researchers so that you can hash out some of those details. I always encourage folks, as folks come in or off of the team, rethink about that. Who's an author, who does what as an author. But always keep in mind that you are partially responsible as one of the people on that article for what's going on with that article. Any questions on authorship kind of stuff? Okay, so this one's always kind of entertaining. Back at Retraction Watch. Just a quick question to the group, because I know this comes up on occasion. Can ChatGPT or any of its cousins, the large language models, be an author on a paper? Yes, no. Or who knows? Any thoughts? Oops. Don't know what happened here.
I'm still here, Sheila.
Okay. Are you guys seeing our screen?
We're
Oh.
actually not. We're seeing the classroom.
Okay. Are we back now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Um, okay. So where was I? Okay. ChatGPT, can it be a co-author? I'm getting some head shaking in here, some shoulder shrugs in here. And just a few fun ones to look at here. These are just some examples of folks that used ChatGPT to help with their text and did not extract the regenerate response to get a different option. Or I think there's another one. Generate response. I think there's a couple in here that are certain that I keep getting the generate response ones. I should have made some notes to myself. Okay, so here's some others where it's just using terms that are a little strange. There's another one, ChatGPT, when it's responding, will give you a certainly. Let me give you my words for that, and they didn't delete out the certainly. So this is examples of articles that actually got published. Somebody used ChatGPT to help them write the thing. The peer reviewers didn't catch it. The editors didn't catch it. It, just did not go well. So can ChatGPT be a co-author? The folks that just the editor groups that look at these kinds of things have generally said, no, it can't be a co-author. Can't be listed among the co-authors. And there's a link here, authorship in AI tools. Can't be listed as an author because it can't take responsibility. Just, back to that authorship stuff. And in general, you need to disclose that you used AI tools somewhere, and you're still responsible for whatever that content is that was produced by AI. Like certainly let me give you that answer. So as you're thinking about avoiding issues with AI, it's like, well, English is my first language. I want somebody else to help me write this. I'm a scientist, not a journalist. I want somebody else to help me with writing. In general, Grammarly, those kinds of tools are fun. You want to be comfortable with whatever tool you're using. I encourage you guys to use the ones that are provided by Texas A&M, because as you're writing your research, if you're using one of the free versions, you will run into challenges with it probably learning from you. Do you want it to learn what your groundbreaking new research and having it spit out in the science high school biology students article that they're doing for class when you're still writing your stuff? So use the protected versions if you can. When you are doing your research, take notes to yourself about when you're using it. If you're using it as part of your methods, as part of your data analysis, make notes to yourself. What am I using it for? What versions am I using? How am I using it? All of those kinds of things. If you're using a large language model to help you with the writing, maybe save off the prompts and the results just so that you've got a record of that. Depending on the journal, they will want you to disclose how did you use AI for your processes. Sometimes it's part of the methods and the research methods. Sometimes it's just we use ChatGPT to help us write stuff. And you've got some wording about that. But if you don't have those notes to yourself, then when you're turning around and trying to publish, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to try to remember what I did and all of that. The other thing to keep in mind is cross-verifying the results. It's sort of that you don't know what you don't know. Have a human being read your article and look through it and say, and go ahead and tell them, hey, I use ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever to help me write this. Do you see any oddities? And it can spot that, certainly, or, regenerate response, or, this is just worded kind of strangely. Let's change it up a little bit. So, have a human being validate some of your writing stuff. There are several places that you can look at and get some help with this. The artificial intelligence page on Texas A&M site. Okay, so this is sort of the this AI page is sort of the clearinghouse of all of the stuff, depending on the topic that you're looking at. So if you want to use it to help with teaching or learning, there's some great notes there. On the research side, there is going to be some ideas about, how you might want to use it, resources and technology guidance. So this is from technology services, how we can help you integrate it for your analyzing your methods or whatever, webinars, storage, what tools, those kinds of things, technical training. So all kinds of information there, as well as other resources and tools. And some guidelines from the various agencies about use of tools. So that may be of interest as you're moving forward. So keep the A&M page in mind for the artificial intelligence stuff. A couple of examples. Let's see. Just let Google help me out here. Okay, so Elsevier, big publisher, they will talk about use of AI and AI assisted tools, images. So they are saying for their journals, they're not accepting Gen AI to create or alter images in manuscripts. If you need to adjust brightness and contrast and whatever, that may be acceptable. If it's part of the research design or methods, they want you to put it in the methods section. So they've got a lot of details. They've got a lot of FAQs about, okay, what can I do it for, use it for, what can I not use it for? Another example, association. They have theirs in the FAQ. Okay, so their FAQs are looking at St. having challenges with my direct view. I won't waste a lot of time on this one, but there's some more, how Elsevier had several paragraphs where this one is just a real quick short paragraph that says, If you used it in research, put it in your methods. If you used it for help with writing, then you just need to disclose that as part of your acknowledgments or that kind of thing. So that's just a couple of examples. What that was. Okay. So moving right along, for attribution and copyright kinds of things. A lot of folks mentioned that references, those kinds of things. If we're at the Retraction Watch database again, and this time I'm just going to go straight into the database, and the name I'm interested in looking at is my example. And for this one, I'm going to grab the DLF traction. So we'll go completely far afield from health sciences and look at 19th century French studies. And the retraction notice okay, so hopefully y'all can read this. What went wrong here? Anybody online can put it in the chat, and Kathy will tell me about it. Anybody here? Okay, they didn't attribute. They dropped some citations. So wrote some stuff. Yes. Exactly. They didn't put the citations. Which, again, you would sometimes people think, oh, that's not a big deal or whatever, and yeah, it can be. So the idea there is if you use somebody's ideas, if you used a graph, if you used an image, at a minimum, you want to make sure that you give attribution or give credit as a citation for that thing, whatever it is. Let's look at another one. In this one, I'll save myself a little trouble and just go straight to the entry. This is one. Just kind of scroll down the important part. Retracted because so this is an attribution kind of thing, but what's different about this one? I would think that, and this one's a little hard to identify from earlier work. This is from her own earlier work. So it is a case of basically self-plagiarism. Okay, so self-citation is fine. She didn't even cite the work. Okay. So she used images or she used charts or she used whatever from an earlier article for a second article, word for word kind of thing, same plagiarism kind of thing, but didn't cite herself. She just pretended like it was brand new stuff a second time. If she had used that image and had, we'll talk about copyright and permissions and so on in a minute, but if she had cited and said, and from my earlier work in blah, blah, blah journal, she probably would have been fine. But she didn't do that. So that's another angle on attribution, is even if it's your own stuff, but you presented it or talked about it or had it in an article somewhere else, you need to be sure and cite yourself and that earlier work, because that can, again, also generate more issues. Just a quick yes, no question. Can you use an image from someone else's published article, you're citing it, do your thing and cite it, in your own manuscript without first asking permission? Seeing head shakes. Okay. What about, can I use my own image from an earlier article in my new manuscript if I cite the original work? And I'm seeing some head shakes. Any disagreement on Zoom one way or the other, Kathy?
I got a response. Someone says no. The answer
Okay.
is no.
Okay. Oh, I have a, yes. The question was, does it matter if it's original research or a review article? Generally doesn't matter. It would be either one. And actually the response is, as in many things with copyright, it depends. It depends on the journal. And considering some of the challenges I had with getting the links, I may not even jump over there and show you these, but the American Heart Association journals, FAQ, they retain copyright for the works when somebody publishes in their journal. So if you want to use someone else's images or your own images, if you published in that journal, you need to get permission from them to use it again. Okay, so, and you get the permissions and you still cite it and so on. In the case of an open access journal, I'm just going to try here. Yeah, there we go. It's an open access journal. The author retains right to the work. Permitted uses include self-archiving. Anyone may copy, redistribute, reuse, or modify the content as long as the author and original source are properly cited. So the way they run things, it's open access. We use the Creative Commons license that says, yeah, you can use it, you can do whatever you want with it, just make sure you give the person attribution for the work. So it's very much an it depends situation as far as where it was published. And when you send something to PLOS, if you're citing something from another, like an image or whatever, you may have to still get copyright permissions from that other party. So it gets complicated. It kind of boils down to read your author agreement when you publish. So again, with all of those things, seek permissions, properly credit, use a citation management tool. I've got links here. I want Kathy will put those in the links, and I'll make sure that the slides are distributed. But if you're not using a citation management tool yet, use one. follow the guidelines, take advantage of the Creative Commons licenses. Data ethics, let's jump over into that one.
Sheila,
Yes.
we got a question asking if it would be possible for the volume on your end to be increased.
Oh, okay. Now I'll stand closer to the microphone. Is that better?
Okay.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so back at Retraction Watch and the database. And this is Chen. Search. Okay, and this one is going to actually return 4 entries. It's really only 2 articles. They modified things a few times. And for this one, grab the first one. What's this one? Okay, so what? This is one of our Nobel Prize winners. Okay, so what kinds of things went wrong here? Okay, so the images were altered in some way that couldn't be explained. And what was the other thing that was a problem? If somebody had said, "Hey, you guys messed with those images," what's the other problem? No data, couldn't get back to the original data. Okay, so that is just straight up poor management of the data. You should always be able to get back to your original data for exactly this reason. If somebody wants to question it, or if you'd like to do some additional work on it, you need to be able to have those copies, preserve those copies so that you can get back to them, so that somebody else can get back to them if they need to. That becomes a very important issue and can cause a lot of problems. And a lot of the situations that turn up in that Retraction Watch database are, hey, they were accused of doing something, an image looked funny, and they couldn't get to the original data to prove it. And let's see, we're a little tight on time, so I'll skip this one. But by all means, go back and take a look at this one. This is, okay, this is an informed consent example. So this is more situations where they were doing surveys about caregivers during COVID. And they got informed consent, good, followed processes. Unfortunately, 2 of the people that they got consent from were minors. And the guardians did not sign the informed consent. And when they had to pull those 2 out after the fact, out of their data, it then changed all of their results because the numbers work differently. So they had to retract. What they're going to do is redo all the numbers and resubmit, or at least that's their plan. So even just process kinds of things can be a big problem. And then there's one more. This one is more an authorship issue. They presented it to the IRB, and The IRB reviewed it, but they never officially approved it. One of the authors submitted the article and got it published. The retraction was at the request of one of the other co-authors because they were like, wait a minute, we didn't even finish getting the IRB approval. I'm listed as a co-author on this thing. I didn't know anything about it. So that kind of goes back to that authorship thing and making sure that everybody that's an author agrees on publishing. That also applies to sharing data. In some cases, you may be required to share the data for your funder or for your institution or for the journal, but everybody needs to be on board as far as how that's done, what that looks like. Or in some cases, you may not be able to share the data. It just kind of depends on the situation. So you want to plan ahead of time. How are you going to manage it? How are you keeping it secure? How are you keeping track of it so you don't lose it? And if you're going to share it, where are you going to share it? Then, you're cross-checking against all of the guidelines from your institutions. You're keeping track of it. You're using good databases. You are documenting all of this stuff. Documenting is boring, but you want to document all that stuff. And to be honest, that's a place that some of those large language models can come in handy. You can put a bunch of those business bullet points in there. This is what we're going to do, have it spit it out, read over it to make sure it's right, and use that as one of your tools to help with documenting. At least that's what I do because I hate doing documentation. And then do the thing that you said you were going to do, and actually carry through with it. And I am going to pop over and make sure that y'all know that about the search management guide. Let me get back to medical sciences library and guides, because one look at all of the different rules and all the things are going to make your eyes hurt. So this research data management guide is extremely useful. Okay, there is a whole section on doing data management planning. The DMP tool is wonderful for helping you with planning your data processes. If you're doing a grant for NIH or NSF or DOD, they have templates in there to help you with, okay, this is where this agency wants this information. There's also just a generic one that says, okay, I want to plan my data. What do I do? And it gives you some boxes to fill out. It's just a great way to step you through that process. There is a link to a bunch of data sharing policies from the federal agencies. If you are looking for, okay, the funder says I have to share my data somewhere, they haven't told me where to share my data. This data repositories has a lot of great ideas, disciplinary repositories, different places that you can put things. If you are looking for data, there's additional resources there. I won't go into all of these because again, I want to give you all a chance to move on. And data management workshops. Okay, we do workshops every semester, just data management basics, sensitive data, all of those kinds of things. So, and yeah, I have a link to those directly as well. So we have several left for this spring. My recap, okay, I've got 2 minutes. Mistakes can happen to anybody. We saw what all happens there, but it affects everybody that's involved, and it could be well beyond just your small group. Be aware of what could happen. You guys as postdocs, you're modeling behavior for grad students that might be in your class or in your labs or undergrads or anybody that you're working with. So, model it for others. We have resources to help you along the way. We have librarians to help you along the way. This link is to a consultation page on the Medical Sciences Library website. MSL. Here's our consultation. Choose that, and you can get help with any librarian and schedule time, or you can pick an individual to consult with. So we're here to help you with this stuff. I know there is a lot of information out there. Whoops, wrong one. There, okay. There's a lot of information out there. Let me activate my feedback, please. Please give us your thoughts. What other kinds of things might you like to see going forward? Just a few quick questions there. Feedback is definitely Sheila, stand closer to the microphone. I've got that one. If there's any other things that you would like to see, one of the ones that I am inclined to want to do, but I don't know if anybody wants one, is a workshop on how to do a data audit. Sort of that, okay, we did our data management plan, and now a year later, are we actually doing those things? I don't know if that's something that anybody cares about. If you are interested in that, please put that in, please put that in the feedback. And any other topics, it doesn't have to be data related, but anything that you would like to hear about from the libraries. And thank you all very much. Really appreciate you guys. And any questions?
Interesting.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
The session was very interesting, and we are very keen observing for your talk.
Great, thank you.
And I would like to know, self citations are possible to take the self citations, or there will be any problem for self citation?
Self-citation, that's one of those kind of squishy areas. Obviously, if you're building on your own research and you're doing something new, you have to kind of refer back to, okay, this thing I did a year ago, I need to talk about, or I built on it from there. It can get a little strange over time if the primary person that you're citing in your subsequent articles is yourself. I mean, it starts looking a little weird of, okay, of the 50 citations, I have 30 of them are me citing myself. That looks like you're kind of padding your your tenure portfolio if you're a professor. So I would say if it's necessary to tell your story or to set the stage or to build on whatever your new article is, by all means, yes, cite yourself. But if there are others that you could cite that would also tell that story, go ahead and throw a few of those in there too, just so it doesn't look like you're, again, trying to add your statistics, for lack of a better term. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you very
Sure,
much.
sure. Yes.
We
Uh,
can,
Wait, we've got a question in here.
yeah, can we
Okay, so the question in here is, does the self-plagiarism apply to images that you've drawn? Okay. If the schematic that you drew was in a published article or whatever, and you used it in a second one, I would still cite it if it was exactly the same. And again, you want to check those author agreements from the first article, because you may have to get permissions from the journal to include that new image. Does that make sense? Okay, I think there was a question from one of the rooms in Zoom. No? Okay, I can't hear. If you are talking, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
So if you come to know about a certain lab or some labs, they publish very high impact journal like Science, Sail, or Nature, and they got numerous R1 grant and many other grants, but their foundation's work were falsified and fabricated. Then what should you do after knowing these things?
Has the problem become known publicly?
It's not publicly, but the lab members, everyone knew that it was fabricated because they couldn't produce their own data. So now in an ideal situation, the PI should come forward and request for retraction, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if
Ideally,
that's not
what
happening,
should happen.
yeah, that's an ideal situation. But I'm talking about an exceptional situation. Then, what's the right thing to do?
My suggestion is probably within the lab, discuss it first. It's sort of that if you can work it out among the folks in that lab first to say, yes, this is the right thing to do, then by all means you should do that. If, it's just hitting a brick wall, then at that point it's probably going to the institution where that lab belongs, the research office. And saying, this looks questionable. It's just sort of going up that normal chain of command. It could also be done as a letter of concern kind of thing to the journal that says, hey, this looks questionable.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to know. So can someone just approach the editors of the journal with the letter of with some letter?
Yeah, usually there is a means of presenting to the journal. It may be an email address, it may be a something else where you can say, okay, I think this is problematic. They may want something a little more formal, as in an actual letter to them saying, hey, this is questionable. It really kind of depends on the journal, because they certainly don't want to raise a lot of red flags just on something that they're not sure about either.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Definitely a sticky integrity question.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I have a
Go ahead.
I have a question in continuation to what just Rudra said. What if we bring it to the notice to the editors of the journal? What will happen to the whistleblowers?
I'm sorry, what will happen to who?
Like if we are telling it, let's say we have reported it, we are the whistleblowers that this is going bad. Is there a way to get protected somehow? Because sometimes the people who know something is going bad in the lab are actually the members of the lab.
Okay. That is where, and I may kind of defer to Stacy a little bit here as far as protections. If someone brings something forward, does that go through the research office? I'm thinking whistleblower kinds of things. I mean, I know there are state and university protections that say, yes, if you're a whistleblower about a problem, you are protected from being run off because of that. But I don't know exactly which office that is here.
Thank you.
I think it's responsible conduct of research office. Okay. So Stacy's saying it should be through the, if it's here at A&M, for example, it would be through the Vice President of Research Office. There's a responsible conduct of research office. And I'm sure they have a link to a site that says, hey, report something that looks strange.
Sheila,
Anything else? Yes.
we had a question online, and I wanted to ask just to benefit the group. So the question is, if I've added a figure in my thesis, can I use it in a manuscript later? And if they created the figure themselves, and then the follow-up question is a citation to the thesis required?
I would definitely cite to the thesis. I think that's fine, as long as you're doing the citation back to the original thesis. You should be good to go with that.
Add something to it. Add a few sentences to the answer.
Oh, basically the response there would be, if you're citing an image from your thesis, can you use it later in an article? As long as you cite it in that article that it's back to your thesis, you should be fine.
But in certain universities, they have a system that you cannot publish your thesis for like 2 years. So if you were publishing your paper first, before publishing your thesis, you can technically use the same image, and you don't need to worry about citation. But you cannot use the same same writing, because you need to change your writing, because that would be a self-plagiarism.
Okay.
You can use the same graph, because you cannot change your data. So the graphs or figures are fine from thesis or paper, but you need to write it separately.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about the embargo after your thesis. Good point. See, we're all learning from each other.
One more question. So the question is, some reviewers asked to give recent citations from the last 10 years only. What if the information was first given 20 years ago? What is ethically correct? And I think what this question is referring to is references cited as resource material.
Okay.
I've never seen a reviewer have stipulations about the age of the citations.
Yeah. I would say, I guess first attempt would be, go ahead and cite the thing from 20 years ago with a note, to the reviewer or whoever, to the editor, that, hey, this makes sense as one to cite. I guess plan B could be citing something within that 10-year time frame that also cites or references the older thing. And that may not necessarily work for your situation, but that's.
Yeah, I can think of context where it would actually raise a red flag if you didn't cite the older citations. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my first instinct would still be to grab the older one and include it.
Mhm.
And then if you get pushback, say, as part of your feedback to the reviewer, but I really need this one. And I've been told we're going to be cutting off in about 4 minutes. So I will wrap up here. I will make sure to get you guys copies of the slides. And thank you very much for the good discussion. And feel free to reach out with questions. Thank you for the feedback, if you shared some feedback. And you guys have a good rest of the day.
You.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Sure. Thank you.
Your meeting has ended.